What's up, everybody? I am back with the Explainer Comics videos. I'm gonna be doing 3 on 1 because they're roughly like 13, 14 minutes between them. It's been a minute, so I've been sitting on these for a while, because I've been handling other stuff, and I still had to wrap up that Green Lantern comic review, which is up on the channel if you want to check out my review of Kyle Rayner's Green Lantern's origin story and his fight with Hal Jordan Parallax. Anyway, like this video, leave a comment below, follow the Explainer Comics, check out his video, and the first one we'll be checking out is the most powerful lanterns for each core explained in 15 minutes. Speaking of Green Lantern. So, here we go.
Hal Jordan. Hal Jordan didn't just wear the ring. He redefined what it meant to wield willpower. Chosen as the first human Green Lantern, Hal was thrown into a universe of cosmic law and ancient order, and he rose to become its most fearless enforcer. This is the man who held entire tectonic plates together to stop Earth from ripping apart. Using sheer will, he saved the universe more times than the Guardians can count, we'll see. But his story isn't just about heroics. He once became Parallax, the physical embodiment of fear, after a mental breakdown in the destruction of Coast City. That fall nearly ended the Corps, but Hal clawed his way back, dying, resurrecting, then earning redemption as both a lantern and the Spectre, the spirit of vengeance. No other lantern has ever carried that much power or that much guilt. His ring isn't just a weapon, it's an extension of a mind trained in aerial combat, boxing, and strategic warfare. He can summon constructs so detailed and precise, they rival Kyle Rayner's artistic creations. And in combat, he's gone toe-to-toe with Sinestro, Mongul, Black Adam, and even Superman, and lived to punch again. But what really sets him apart isn't raw power, it's resilience. When the Corps was dead, he brought it back. When the universe turned on him, he fought to earn trust again. When wielding the entire emotional spectrum, he didn't just survive, he led it into battle. Hal Jordan stands as the definitive Green Lantern, the benchmark every ring bearer since has followed. Every ring that's chosen a human carries a trace of his legacy. Sinestro. Sinestro mastered fear long before the ring chose him. Once the greatest Green Lantern in the universe, he was a legend in Sector 1417, until his obsession with control turned him into a tyrant. When the Guardians stripped him of his ring and cast him out, he didn't fade. He evolved, and came back stronger with a weapon forged in terror. From the antimatter world of Quard, he built the Sinestro Corps, an army chosen not for their morals, but their ability to instill fear. Murderers, monsters, and cosmic warlords answered his call. He trained them, hardened them, and unleashed them. Not to destroy the universe, but to force it into order. Sinestro didn't just challenge the Green Lantern Corps, he humiliated them. He allied with the Anti-Monitor, Superboy Prime, and even corrupted the Book of Oa. His Yellow Lanterns overran Oa itself, forcing the Guardians to rewrite their sacred laws, finally permitting lethal force. That wasn't a loss, that was Sinestro winning. But he's more than a strategist. In battle, Sinestro is brutal, calculated, and surgical. He's clashed with Hal Jordan more times than anyone else alive, and even wielded the White Lantern entity for a brief moment during Blackest Night. Few beings have ever held that kind of power, and fewer survived it. His ring doesn't just create constructs, it makes people hesitate, doubt themselves, break down under their own fear. And Sinestro controls that fear like a symphony. He isn't just the most powerful Yellow Lantern, he's its creator, its commander, and its icon. The Corps wears his symbol, and as long as fear exists in the universe, Sinestro will never need to raise his voice, because fear listens, and it obeys. Kyle Rayner. Kyle didn't just wear every ring in the emotional spectrum, he mastered them. When the Green Lantern Corps collapsed, there was only one ring left, and it chose Kyle. No backup, no instruction manual, just a struggling artist from Earth, suddenly responsible for the fate of an entire universe. He was never supposed to make it. But Kyle didn't just survive, he redefined what a lantern could be. His constructs weren't basic shields and fists. They were full-scale mechs, giant dragons, even functioning machines, brought to life by an artist's imagination and an indestructible will. But Kyle's greatest transformation came when he became the White Lantern. After wielding all 7 emotional rings at once, he unlocked the power of life itself. Reality bending, resurrection, healing entire planets. He could undo death with a thought. Not borrowed power, mastered. And he didn't just hold that power, so he earned it. Kyle withstood the overwhelming force of Parallax, channeled Ion without losing control, and resisted entities that shattered minds. Even the Guardians recognized his balance, naming him Honor Guard, second only to themselves. He's fought side by side with Superman and Wonder Woman, trained under Martian Manhunter, and stood toe-to-toe with cosmic threats like Necron and Oblivion. And when others saw destruction, Kyle built hope, one construct at a time. Among every Lantern ever chosen, he's the only one who wore the entire spectrum and came out stronger. No rage, no fear, just vision, discipline, and a soul that never broke. John Stewart. For John, he didn't choose the ultraviolet ring. It buried itself into his bloodstream, not a gift. It was an infection, a parasitic force powered by the invisible emotional spectrum. Emotions most Lanterns try to ignore: shame, guilt, hate, and repressed pain. At his lowest, the ring found him, and it didn't strap onto a finger. It rewrote him, burned itself into his body, made him speak a language no one could understand. The ultraviolet core doesn't recruit, it corrupts. And yet, John didn't break. While most became slaves to their worst thoughts, John Stewart fought back. And in that inner war, he didn't just purge the darkness, he wielded it, fully aware, fully in control. That's what set him apart. He turned subconscious poison into a conscious weapon. Even before the ultraviolet ring, John had earned his stripes. A former US Marine, a trained architect, a Lantern who once rebuilt an entire planet with nothing but his ring and blueprints burned into memory. He's led the Corps, stared down gods, and once took down a moon-sized enemy construct by turning himself into a literal star. But the ultraviolet ring unlocked something different. Raw emotions stripped of filters. No oaths, no guardians. Just power that feeds on what you hide. And when that power fused with someone who's already spent a lifetime mastering discipline, the result wasn't chaos, it was control. John Stewart didn't become the strongest ultraviolet Lantern because he had no demons. He became it because he faced them, and then made them follow his orders. Carol Ferris. He runs one of the biggest aerospace companies on Earth, pilots experimental jets for fun, and casually doubles as the queen of an alien core powered by the most unpredictable emotion in the galaxy: love. But this isn't romance, it's obsession. Heartbreak, vengeance, resurrection, all wrapped in violet light. The Zamarons chose her to wield the star Sapphire Ring, binding her to a power that doesn't just create constructs, it forges emotional bonds, manipulates hearts, and heals the broken. At her strongest, Carol has restored life to the dead, turned enemies into allies, and overwhelmed beings like Larfleeze and Atrocitus with pure emotional overload. She's battled Hal Jordan, Sinestro, and even Black Lanterns, holding her own every time. When Necron's army rose during Blackest Night, it was Carol who helped reunite the emotional spectrum, flying side by side with her former lover to reignite the white light and bring back fallen heroes. And she's never been a sidekick. Even when Hal quit the Corps, Carol didn't wait around. She led the Star Sapphires into battle, protected Zamaron, and enforced love as a weapon of justice, even when it meant tearing through entire fleets to do it. Her constructs aren't based on fantasy, they reflect the emotional core of her target: pain, desire, regret. That makes her not just a fighter, but a mirror. And not everyone survives seeing who they really are. She stands at the intersection of will and heart, ruthless in battle, grounded in leadership, and unshakable in purpose. Atrocitus. Atrocitus didn't find rage, shame. It found him when the Manhunters wiped out Sector 66, slaughtering his family, his friends, his people. He stood alone in the ruins of his world with one emotion left: pure, unfiltered fury. And from that, the Red Lantern Corps was born, forged in blood, fire, and vengeance. Unlike other Lanterns, Red Lanterns don't wear their rings. They become them. The moment it bonds, the ring replaces your heart. Take it off, you die. But Atrocitus didn't just survive the transformation, he controlled it. While his Corps often lost their minds to rage, he remained focused, a tactician with the power of a nuclear warhead and the precision of a general. He breathes napalm, his blood is acid, and his presence alone weakens other Lantern rings the longer they stay near him. In battle, he's torn through Sinestro Corps soldiers, shrugged off Blue Lantern suppression fields, and stood toe-to-toe with Martian Manhunter without backing down. But his power doesn't stop at violence. Atrocitus is a master of blood magic, a dark art that lets him glimpse the future, summon forbidden knowledge, and bend death to his will. During the Blackest Night, Atrocitus relied on more than brute strength. He used ancient prophecies to guide his attacks and target the heart of the threat. He's conquered planets, overthrown dictators, and led revolutions, not for power, but to burn down the system that let his world die. He isn't fueled by blind rage. His fire is focused, relentless, strategic, and once it's aimed at you, there's no putting it out. Saint Walker. Saint is what every Lantern looks for when everything else has failed. Hope, steady and unbreakable. The first of the Blue Lanterns, he didn't come from war or tragedy. He came from faith. When his homeworld faced extinction from a dying star, Saint Walker didn't panic. He spoke to his people, calmed them, and gave them the strength to face death with dignity. And then he reversed it. The ring chose him for that moment, and with its power, he reignited that same star, giving his planet billions of years of life. That wasn't just hope, that was transformation. Blue lanterns don't operate like the others. Alone, they can fly and shield. But near a green lantern, their power unlocks insane potential. Supercharging rings, neutralizing red lanterns, and weakening orange constructs on sight. Saint Walker has fought alongside Hal Jordan, Kyle Rayner, and even Atrocitus, not with rage or force, but presence. His light changes the battlefield. His ring can create constructs, but they don't reflect imagination. They reveal what others hope for. Use it on a warrior, and you might see their family. Use it on a villain, and you see the innocence they lost. That kind of insight doesn't just win fights, it redeems them. Walker once calmed Larfleeze's hunger. He's revived lanterns on the brink of death. And in the blackest night, when entire worlds fell into despair, he became the spark that kept the emotional spectrum united. He doesn't need to yell, doesn't need to dominate, he simply endures, and the longer he stands, the more others rise. Indigo 1. For Indigo 1, she doesn't speak much. When she does, it's in a language so ancient that even Green Lantern rings can't translate it. But when the universe was falling apart during the blackest night, she appeared out of nowhere, erased an entire wave of black lanterns, and vanished like a ghost. No drama, no ego, just action. She leads the Indigo tribe, a core bound to the light of compassion, an energy that doesn't just feel for others, it absorbs their pain and reflects it back. Her staff isn't for show. It channels raw emotional power and mimics the abilities of any lantern she's near. Rage, fear, love, willpower, all copied, weaponized, and redirected. But what makes Indigo 1 terrifying isn't just her combat skill, it's her origin. Before the ring, she was a killer named Iroke. No mercy, no conscience. The ring didn't choose her because she was good, it chose her to make her better. And it worked. She leads not by command, but through the strength of her presence alone. She stood with Hal Jordan, fought shoulder to shoulder with Sinestro, and helped reunite the full emotional spectrum when no one else could. She coordinated battles across the galaxy, brought Atrocitus and Larfleeze to the table, and kept the entire operation focused on one thing: survival through unity. The Indigo tribe doesn't recruit, it redeems. And Indigo 1 is proof that even the darkest past can create the brightest light. Her compassion isn't soft, it's absolute, unwavering. And when wielded with her experience and power, it becomes one of the deadliest forces in the entire emotional spectrum. She was once a weapon. Now she decides which ones get a second chance, and which ones don't. Larfleeze. He doesn't have teammates. He is the Orange Lantern Corps. Because when you wield the power of avarice, sharing isn't part of the vocabulary. The ring didn't just bond to him, it rewrote his DNA, fused into his soul, and turned greed into something primal. He's been alive for millions of years, living in a fortress buried deep beneath the dead planet Okaara. His army consists of thousands of orange constructs, each one a soul he consumed and enslaved. These aren't illusions, they're the remnants of those he killed, now bound to serve him for eternity. Larfleeze's power source is the Orange Lantern Battery, and he refuses to let anyone near it. Not because it's sacred, because it's his. He once fought off the Guardians, the Green Lantern Corps, and even Atrocitus all at once just to keep it. He doesn't sleep, he barely eats. He only stops fighting when he's forced to, and even then, he's scanning for something else to take. He once stole rings mid-battle, he's attacked other lanterns just for looking at him the wrong way, and when the emotional spectrum had to unite during Blackest Night, it took massive persuasion just to get Larfleeze to agree. And even then, he demanded a gift. But here's the scariest part, he doesn't need the ring anymore. The orange light is embedded in him permanently. He's a walking battery. And no matter how strong his enemies are, they're always outnumbered by the ghosts of everything he's stolen. He doesn't care about justice, balance, or redemption. He cares about what's his. And in the Orange Lantern Corps, everything is. Nekron. Nekron doesn't wear a ring. He doesn't need to. He is death, the literal embodiment of the void that predates life, light, and the emotional spectrum itself. While other lanterns channel emotion, Nekron represents the final silence that swallows it all. He commands the Black Lantern Corps, a legion of the dead resurrected to extinguish life. Heroes, villains, civilians. If they've ever died, he can bring them back, twisted, corrupted, and loyal to his will. His reach doesn't just span space, it penetrates time, memory, and identity. When the Blackest Night began, Nekron didn't just attack the universe, he exposed it. He revealed that every hero who had ever returned from death still had a piece of him inside them. Superman, Wonder Woman, even Hal Jordan, all marked, all vulnerable. He withstood full-force attacks from the Guardians, resisted the combined emotional spectrum, and even tanked a blast from the Anti-Monitor like it was background noise. And when Sinestro bonded with the White Entity, Nekron killed him instantly. No hesitation, no warning. Nekron isn't a villain with a plan. He's a force of cosmic balance that sees life as a mistake. He doesn't conquer, he corrects. His only weakness is the white light of creation, which had to be wielded by Hal Jordan and the freshly formed White Lantern Corps just to push him back into the dark. He has no fear, no heart, and no mercy. He doesn't speak in threats, he speaks in truths. And as long as things are born, Nekron will always have something to reclaim. You can't kill death, you can only delay it. And Nekron is patient, and that's it. So, if every Lantern Corps went to war at full power, every ring charged, every leader unleashed, who actually do you think will win that cosmic showdown? Share your thoughts in the comments section below.
Alright, that was fun. What else? Okay. Every Marvel era ever explained.
The origin. Back in 1939, Marvel wasn't even called Marvel. It was known as Timely Comics, and its pages were packed with bold, fast-paced stories that screamed adventure. The world was on edge with World War II underway, and comic books quickly became a place where ordinary people could find extraordinary hope. In those early days, the heroes didn't wear complicated moral dilemmas or emotional baggage. They were brave, strong, and proudly American. And leading them all was Captain America, a super soldier in red, white, and blue who punched Hitler on the cover of his very first issue. It was raw, explosive, and as clear-cut as good versus evil. That was exactly what readers wanted during wartime. But Cap wasn't the only face of the Golden Age. There was the Human Torch. Not the Fantastic Four version, but an android whose body could burst into flames. Then came Namor the Submariner, a fierce underwater anti-hero who didn't always fight for humanity. These characters were unpredictable, powerful, and perfect for the explosive storytelling of the era, and the themes were just as big. There were monsters rising from the ocean, shadowy figures lurking in alleyways, and bold spies fighting enemies with secret gadgets. It was all fast-paced and exaggerated, echoing the pulp magazines of the time. Even after the war ended, comics didn't slow down. They evolved. As superheroes started to fade from popularity, horror stories, crime dramas, and science fiction took over. Writers filled pages with vampires, werewolves, and radioactive beasts. Readers loved it, but that love came with a backlash. Concerns about violence and dark imagery led to the Comics Code Authority, a strict rulebook that forced creators to pull back on what they could show. Despite this, the energy never disappeared. It only waited. And by the time the 1960s hit, Marvel exploded back into the spotlight. Only this time, things were about to get louder, weirder, and way more human, the explosion. In the early 1960s, Marvel Comics ignited something that would change superhero stories forever. This wasn't just another reboot or a fresh batch of capes. It was a creative explosion led by minds like Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Steve Ditko. Together, they weren't just telling stories, they were building an entire world where heroes could breathe, suffer, doubt, and live in the same messy reality as the rest of us. It all started with the Fantastic Four in 1961. 4 astronauts hit by cosmic rays came back to Earth not as icons, but as a dysfunctional family with powers they didn't ask for. They argued, they struggled, and they felt human in a way heroes never had before. That crack in the perfect superhero image opened the door for something new, and Marvel didn't hesitate to kick it wide open. Then came Spider-Man, the teen hero who had to juggle high school and crime fighting while barely making rent. He wasn't a sidekick. He was the star, and his problems felt real. Suddenly, being a hero wasn't just about stopping villains. It was about navigating life while trying not to fall apart. The X-Men followed, bringing in themes of isolation, prejudice, and identity. Mutants were born different, feared by the world, and often feared themselves. And it hit deeper than just action panels. It was about society, about people who didn't fit in, and about finding strength in the very things that made you feel broken. By doing so, everything got connected. Iron Man could show up in a Hulk story. The Avengers could form from scattered characters across different titles. This was the Marvel Universe taking shape, one crossover at a time. It was alive, tangled, and broader than anyone had seen before. And just when things felt personal and grounded, the next era took that emotional core and dragged it straight into darkness. Because in the 1970s, heroes weren't just flawed anymore, they were about to get seriously complicated. The Age of Complexity. The 1970s cracked open a new chapter for Marvel, and it was nothing like what came before. This wasn't about flashy costumes or heroic catchphrases anymore. Now the stories dug deeper, got personal, and exposed the parts of these characters that used to stay hidden. Readers weren't just flipping through fun superhero adventures. They were witnessing emotional breakdowns, tragic losses, and characters questioning their own morality. This era made the Marvel Universe feel brutally real. The death of Gwen Stacy shattered Spider-Man's world, and with it, the illusion that heroes always win. Her fall from that bridge marked a turning point, one where consequences began to matter more than the costume. Nothing felt safe, and no one was untouchable anymore. And this is the time the X-Men were completely reborn. With the arrival of Wolverine, Storm, Nightcrawler, and Colossus, the team turned global and unpredictable. Storm controlled the weather, but she also carried heavy emotional storms of her own. Wolverine was the definition of danger, a wild card with claws, trauma, and no patience for rules. But things got even more complex. The Dark Phoenix saga pushed the boundaries even further, showing how power could twist love into destruction. Jean Grey wasn't saved. She destroyed worlds, and then she died. It was raw, intense, and nothing like the clean endings of earlier decades. Additionally, new anti-heroes like the Punisher entered the scene, gunning down criminals with zero hesitation. He wasn't interested in justice, just punishment. It reflected the world's growing cynicism, and Marvel didn't flinch from it. Every panel seemed to say that life is messy, that people are complicated, and that sometimes the heroes don't walk away clean. And just when things felt like they couldn't get any heavier, the next era kicked down the door with bigger guns, sharper edges, and heroes who didn't even pretend to play nice anymore. The Extreme Era. This era was about to bring chaos with muscle, metal, and mayhem. By the mid-80s, Marvel had dropped the gloves completely and stepped into the shadows. It was the Extreme Era, and it earned its name in every way. The tone went darker, the heroes got messier, and the world of comics stopped pretending everything would work out in the end. Blood hit the panels, guns hit the covers, and sometimes even the good guys looked more terrifying than the villains. Anti-heroes stole the spotlight with brutal efficiency. The Punisher wasn't alone anymore. Characters like Deadpool broke the fourth wall while breaking bones. On top of that, Venom twisted Spider-Man's story into something monstrous, all snarls and dripping teeth. Then, Cable arrived from a grim future, packing heat, metal arms, and absolutely zero time for jokes. These weren't classic capes with ideals. They were weapons with a backstory, and people were reading these stories. For this reason, event comics exploded across shelves like blockbuster bombs. Crossover after crossover made it feel like something huge was always going down. But things got darker. Infinity Gauntlet turned Thanos into a god. With a snap, he committed the greatest genocide in the entire Marvel universe. In this era, each event tried to outdo the last, stacking danger on drama until the multiverse itself looked fragile. Outside the pages, things were just as intense. The comic book collector craze hit full speed. Shiny covers, foil variants, first issues, it all became a gold rush for fans and investors. Comics weren't just stories anymore, they were investments, wrapped in plastic sleeves and never read again. Yet the art got louder, the muscles got bigger, and everything felt like it was set to maximum. But eventually the boom started to shake. Oversaturation, fatigue, and crashing markets forced a change. Marvel needed something fresh. So when the dust settled, it found new beginnings in the next era, one where the past was rewritten, the future was remixed, and the entire universe was reborn under a single word. The reboot rush. As the new millennium rolled in, Marvel took a deep breath and hit the reset button. This was the reboot rush, a wild era where the rules were rewritten and entire timelines flipped inside out. The goal wasn't just to modernize the stories, but to completely reintroduce them to a new generation. The classic heroes weren't gone, but they were definitely getting some competition. It all started with the Ultimate line. This fresh take on the Marvel Universe trimmed down decades of continuity and threw readers straight into sleek, updated versions of fan favorites. Ultimate Spider-Man gave Peter Parker a teenage reboot with deeper emotions and sharper writing. The X-Men were cooler, edgier, and far more dysfunctional. Even the Avengers got rebranded as the Ultimates, turning them into a tactical strike force with a meaner edge. But while the Ultimate line was taking off, the main Marvel Universe wasn't slowing down either. Big events started shaking the foundation of everything readers knew. House of M rewrote reality with a single whispered sentence and left mutant kind nearly extinct. Then, Civil War split the superhero community in two and forced everyone to pick a side. Heroes turned against heroes, secret identities were exposed, and trust became just another broken word. In this era, the art got more cinematic, and the writing dug deeper into personal struggles and modern themes. New Avengers brought together an unexpected crew, blending classic icons with newcomers like Luke Cage, Spider-Woman, and Wolverine. Even Iron Man, long considered a B-lister, rose to stardom thanks to his growing presence in both comics and a little movie that hit in 2008. Suddenly, Marvel was being shaped not just by comic books, but by the big screen too. And that synergy would only grow louder. Because just a few years later, comics didn't just reflect the world, they started mirroring the billion-dollar Marvel Cinematic Universe. The Diversity Era, huh? The Diversity Era was Marvel's bold move into a new kind of storytelling, one that finally looked like the world outside the panels. It began with a shift in tone, not just in the action, but in who got to be the hero. This time, it wasn't just about powers, it was about identity, representation, and rewriting what it meant to be a superhero.
Diversity Era.
Miles Morales swung onto the scene as a half-black, half-Latino Spider-Man and immediately changed the game. He wasn't just a side character or a spin-off. He was the real deal, carrying Peter Parker's legacy while carving his own path through the Marvel Universe. Then came Kamala Khan, a Muslim-American teen from Jersey City who idolized Carol Danvers and ended up becoming the new Ms. Marvel. Her stories weren't just relatable, they were refreshingly honest, mixing superhero action with school drama, family pressure, and identity struggles. But Marvel didn't stop there. Jane Foster took up the mantle of Thor, wielding Mjolnir with grace, strength, and a secret pain that made her arc unforgettable. She battled gods and monsters while also battling cancer, proving that heroism runs deeper than a magic hammer. Also, Sam Wilson became Captain America, carrying the shield with a strong moral compass and a deep understanding of the country's flaws. The comics embraced legacy in a way that felt both respectful and revolutionary. Old names were passed on to new faces, and with them came bold, modern stories that didn't back down from real-world topics. Readers saw themselves in the panels in ways they never had before, and a new generation found heroes who spoke directly to them. It was a time of inclusion, of taking risks, and of making sure everyone had a seat at the table. But just as things began to feel more grounded and personal, a much larger force started to reshape the comics themselves. Because what came next was an era where the movies didn't just influence the comics, they practically took over the entire blueprint. The MCU era. The MCU era didn't just change how people saw Marvel, it completely rewired how Marvel operated from the inside out. While the first Iron Man hit theaters in 2008, the comics didn't immediately react, but by 2012, it was clear something massive had shifted. The Marvel Cinematic Universe had become a global machine, and the comics began to mirror its most successful parts. Characters started looking more like their on-screen versions. Nick Fury in the comics suddenly resembled Samuel L. Jackson. The Guardians of the Galaxy, once a barely known group in the comics, were redesigned to match their movie counterparts, complete with Rocket's sarcasm and Star-Lord's charm. Even the lineup of teams like the Avengers shifted to reflect what fans saw in theaters, creating a stronger sense of familiarity for new readers jumping in from the films. The synergy between the comics and movies grew tighter. Major story arcs in the comics began to feel like previews of possible film plots or extended scenes from the MCU's bigger story. Iron Man's behavior, Captain America's politics, and even Thanos' rising influence all started to sync with the cinematic beats. It wasn't just about capitalizing on the popularity of the films. It was about keeping the comics relevant in a world where the movies had become the main gateway for fans. Events like Infinity, Secret Wars, 2015, and even Civil War II carried cinematic flair and widescreen pacing. Everything was bigger, flashier, and tailored to grab attention with bold visuals and fast-paced drama. It was a double-edged sword, though, because while it brought more eyes to the comics, it also made some stories feel like background material for the big screen. Still, this era proved that Marvel could be a multimedia empire, blending comic history with blockbuster spectacle. But just as Marvel seemed to master the art of cinematic synergy, the comics cracked open something even more chaotic: the multiverse era. The multiverse era exploded like a cosmic detonation, sending shockwaves through every layer of Marvel's storytelling. Starting around 2020, the idea of one reality wasn't enough anymore, and Marvel leaned all the way into alternate timelines, fractured dimensions, and overlapping legacies. Everything became connected, from the obscure side characters of Earth 6116 to the darker echoes of twisted universes that had barely been explored before. What made this era wild was how every character suddenly had 1,000 versions of themselves scattered across time and space. You had Spider-Man from different realities teaming up, Wolverine dying in one timeline while thriving in another, and Venom evolving from street-level terror to a multiversal godlike figure. The rules of continuity became more like guidelines, and that gave Marvel room to tell bigger, crazier stories without being chained to what came before. King in Black set the tone early with its apocalyptic tone and high-stakes cosmic warfare. The god of the symbiotes, Knull, brought darkness crashing down across every title, turning Eddie Brock into something far more than just Venom. Then came Dark Web, fusing the mythos of Spider-Man and the X-Men with demonic chaos in the streets of New York, blending magic, clones, and corrupted legacies into one infernal storm. Fall of X shook the foundation of mutant kind, unraveling the utopia of Krakoa and dragging the X-Men into a brutal war over survival and memory. Characters are no longer limited by linear arcs. They are chasing destiny across universes, trying to fix broken timelines, or battling versions of themselves who have made very different choices. In this era, multiversal travel isn't a gimmick. It is the main vehicle for storytelling. Marvel uses it to bring back the dead, reinvent icons, and fold in forgotten corners of its massive universe.
So, sorry, what the? Last one. Every major DC crisis.
Identity Crisis. It started with a murder, but ended with the Justice League tearing itself apart from the inside. Sue Dibney, the wife of Elongated Man, was found dead in their home. No signs of a break-in, no suspects, just a charred corpse and a growing sense that something was very wrong. While the League scrambled to investigate, old scars started bleeding. Years earlier, Dr. Light had broken into the Watchtower and assaulted Sue. The team caught him, but what they did next flipped everything. Instead of justice, Zatanna mind-wiped him. Not just once, multiple times. She didn't just erase memories, she rewired personalities. Batman walked in mid-spell, saw what was happening, and they wiped him. That crack never healed. Green Arrow justified it. Hawkman backed it. Flash had doubts. Wonder Woman wasn't even told. And when heroes start messing with minds, they don't stop at villains. They start tweaking anyone who gets in the way. The killer, it turned out, wasn't Light. It was Jean Loring, Adam's ex-wife, who staged the attack to win him back. She shrank, snuck into Sue's brain, and triggered an aneurysm. Then she lit the body on fire to make it look like an accident. Her plan spiraled. Heroes got hurt, Firestorm was killed, trust inside the League evaporated, no cosmic god, no multiverse collapse, just human failure stacked on secrets, and a line the League was never supposed to cross. This wasn't a reboot, it was a reckoning. Heroes stopped looking like heroes, the Justice League fractured, and even years later, fans still argue whether DC went too far, or finally showed who these people really are. Dark Knights, metal. This was the event where the nightmares
love
started
this
bleeding
event.
into
I will be
reality,
reviewing
literally.
this.
It all began when Batman found a strange material called nth metal, a cosmic metal tied to ancient forces. What Bruce didn't realize was that the metal was linked to Barbados, a dark god who had been watching him through time, waiting for the perfect moment to tear the multiverse apart. And Bruce played right into it. Barbados came from something worse than hell, the dark multiverse, a dimension made of failed worlds and collapsing timelines. Every fear Bruce ever had, every twisted what if, those became real. And they didn't come alone. They came armed, organized, and wearing the bat symbol. 7 versions of Batman broke through, each one a twisted reflection of Bruce if he went off the rails. There was the Red Death, a Batman who stole the Speed Force. The Drowned, a Batwoman-Aquaman hybrid who flooded her Earth. And then there was the Batman who laughs, Bruce infected by Joker toxin, who saw everyone as either prey or punchline. He wasn't just smart, he was vicious. The invasion spread fast, cities fell, heroes got picked off, Batman got used as a portal to breach the Source Wall, and the entire multiverse started collapsing in on itself. The League had to dive headfirst into the dark multiverse, fighting through twisted timelines and their own worst memories just to reach Barbados. They finally pulled it off using nth metal and the last threads of cosmic power. Barbados was sealed. The Dark Knights were defeated, but the damage was permanent. The Source Wall cracked, exposing the
Dark Knight's Metal is probably the one event whose tie-ins I thoroughly enjoy. Normally, I do not care for comic book tie-ins, except for maybe a few rare occasions. But this one, the tie-ins was done so well, because it's just origin stories of each of these different versions of Batman from the Dark Multiverse.
DC Universe to unknown forces far beyond anything they'd seen before, and the Batman who laughs escaped, which meant the nightmare didn't end, it just moved in. Crisis on Infinite Earths. In 1985, DC dropped the biggest cannonball in comic book history. Too many timelines, too many Earths, and too many versions of Superman. Their solution? Kill everything. Crisis on Infinite Earths was a 12-issue reset button, except this one left bodies everywhere. The villain was the Anti-Monitor, a cosmic tyrant from the antimatter universe. He unleashed a wave of white light that started wiping entire Earths off the map. Earth 3 was erased. Earth X got wiped clean. Heroes were killed mid-sentence. Entire worlds blinked out between panels. To stop him, the Monitor gathered every hero and villain he could from across the multiverse. Everyone from Earth 1 Superman to obscure Golden Age leftovers got pulled into the fight. But no matter how many punches were thrown, the death toll kept climbing. Barry Allen, the Flash, outran himself into death to destroy the Anti-Monitor's cannon. His skin peeled away in the Speed Force as he faded from history. Supergirl took on the Anti-Monitor head-on and held her ground long enough to save Superman, only to die in his arms. 2 of DC's biggest icons wiped in a matter of issues. As the crisis spiraled, DC made the call. Collapse every surviving Earth into one. Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth S, Earth X, they fused it all into a single timeline. No more multiverse, no more duplicate characters, no more confusion. Supposedly, the fallout was massive. Some heroes remembered the old worlds, others didn't. The Justice Society was retired, the Golden Age Superman was erased entirely. And from that moment on, every new story in DC had to fit this cleaner, tighter universe. But the cracks showed fast. Some characters had no place in the new timeline. Some origins didn't line up. And DC spent years trying to patch holes they had created themselves. They didn't just delete history, they broke it. And it would never fully heal. Infinite Crisis. By 2005, the timeline DC tried to fix was already cracking. Heroes were paranoid, divided, and no one could agree on what the Justice League even stood for anymore. And then came the voice from the shadows, Earth 2 Superman, long thought gone, watching everything from a pocket universe, and hating what he saw. He wasn't alone. Alexander Luthor, the twisted son of Earth 3's Lex, was with him. So was Superboy Prime, a teenage Superman from a lost Earth who believed everything had gone wrong the moment his world was erased. To them, the modern DC universe was broken. Too violent, too dark, too far from what it used to be. They didn't want to fix it, they wanted to replace it. Alexander started secretly moving pieces, manipulating heroes, reigniting conflicts, and building a massive cosmic tower to restore the old multiverse. Superboy Prime snapped. He ripped heroes apart with bare hands. He killed multiple Teen Titans in one fight. When the heroes tried to stop him, he carved through them like tissue paper. And while all of this unfolded, the Trinity, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman couldn't stop fighting each other. Batman had grown colder. Superman was detached. Wonder Woman had killed Maxwell Lord live on camera. The Justice League didn't just disband, they collapsed. The war reached Metropolis. Dozens of Earths started flickering in and out of existence as Alexander's machine powered up. But the heroes rallied. Connor Kent, the modern Superboy, sacrificed himself to stop Prime. The tower was destroyed, and the multiverse kind of came back. Not fully, not clearly, but it was out there now, splintered and unstable. After 2 decades gone, Barry Allen returned, alive, running, and ready to change everything all over again. DC didn't just bring back legacy, it brought back chaos, and everything that came after. 52, Final Crisis, Multiversity, traced right back to this moment. Blackest Night? The dead didn't stay dead, they got recruited. In 2009, Blackest Night dropped and flipped the entire DC universe into a horror story. Corpses came back with power rings, former heroes, old villains, loved ones, all under one command: erase all emotion. It started with Nekron, the embodiment of death, tapping into the Black Lantern cores. Instead of resting in peace, the Fallen were turned into weapons, fully reanimated and fueled by the memories of who they were. They didn't just attack with fists, they dug into regrets, guilt, and grief. Martian Manhunter came back, so did Aquaman, Elongated Man, Maxwell Lord, and dozens more. They remembered everything, and when they spoke, they cut deep. Victims froze mid-fight, not from fear, but from a heartbreak. The core lanterns couldn't stop it. The green ones weren't enough. So DC lit up the emotional spectrum. Red for rage, blue for hope, indigo for compassion, violet for love, orange for greed. Each had their own core. Some worked together, some didn't. Eventually, the only way forward was unity. Hal Jordan had to unite every lantern color, including villains like Larfleeze and Atrocitus, to form something new. The White Lantern, the only thing strong enough to bring real life back. Barry Allen played a huge role. He outran death again, buying time while the rest of the League regrouped. In the end, Nekron was overpowered, the Black Rings disintegrated, and a shockwave of resurrection hit the battlefield. Heroes came back for real. No strings, no conditions. Maxwell Lord, Hawkman, Firestorm, Aquaman, they all got their lives back, but not everyone saw that as a win. Death had been cheapened. The rules had changed. The emotional stakes of every future story would now carry baggage, because in DC, death used to mean something. Final Crisis. It started with a corpse. Orion, the son of Darkseid, was found dead in a Gotham alley. A new god, murdered. That wasn't a mystery, it was a warning. Darkseid had fallen through the multiverse, crashed into Earth, and taken it over from the inside. He didn't march in with an army. He infected the planet with the anti-life equation, stripping everyone's will and turning the world into a hive of mindless slaves. Friends turned on each other. Civilians became soldiers. Free thought stopped overnight. And in the middle of the collapse, Batman did what no one else could. He loaded a Radion bullet, walked up to Darkseid, and pulled the trigger. The shot landed. Darkseid's body crumbled, but he fired back and hit Bruce with the Omega Sanction, trapping him in time and erasing him from the board. One move, 2 casualties. While the planet was breaking apart, Barry Allen came running out of the Speed Force. He'd been dead since Crisis on Infinite Earths. Now he was back and running for his life, trying to outrun death itself while carrying a sliver of hope. Superman went cosmic. He retrieved the body of Lois Lane and traveled across time and dimension to build a miracle machine, a reality warping device that could rebuild everything. As existence collapsed into a black void, Superman sang a single note powered by every frequency of life. That note rewrote reality and forced Darkseid's lingering essence into nothingness. Batman was gone. The League was fractured, time was unstable, and nobody, not even the readers, fully understood what had just happened. Critics called it brilliant, others called it unreadable. But one thing stuck: DC had officially gone full multiversal. Flashpoint. Barry Allen woke up and everything was wrong. No Speed, no Justice League. His mom, alive. His dad, free. For a second, it felt like a dream. Then the world started bleeding. Wonder Woman and Aquaman were at war. Full-scale, global annihilation. London was underwater. Europe was ash. Themyscira had turned into a prison camp. Superman didn't exist. No one even knew who he was. And Bruce Wayne was dead. It was Thomas Wayne behind the cowl now, broken, brutal, and trigger-happy. Barry had created this timeline, all of it. When he ran back in time to stop Reverse Flash from killing his mother, he cracked reality at its foundation. Histories rewrote themselves, powers shifted, and heroes were never born. The only way out was through the fire. Barry had to team up with Thomas Wayne, Batman with nothing left to lose, and recreate the accident that gave him his speed. Lightning, chemicals, full burn. It almost killed him, but it worked. And then came the confrontation. Eobard Thawne, the Reverse Flash, stepped in to gloat. He wasn't the architect, Barry was. Thawne just let it all unfold. One selfish choice unraveled the world. In the final battle, Superman, who'd been locked in a government bunker his whole life, was unleashed, but it wasn't enough. Heroes fell. The war didn't stop. Time kept breaking. Barry ran again, and this time, he let his mother die. And with that, the timeline snapped back. Almost. The world was patched together, but not the same. The New 52 was born. New origins, new costumes, new continuity. Years of history got compressed, rewritten, or erased. Everything that came before was wiped clean. 0 hour. It all started with a city gone. Coast City, home of Hal Jordan, was obliterated in Reign of the Supermen. 7 million lives erased by Mongul and the cyborg Superman. Hal couldn't handle it. He begged the Guardians to bring it back. When they refused, he snapped. That's how Parallax was born. Hal Jordan, the greatest Green Lantern, killed the Corps, stole all the power from Oa, and disappeared into the time stream with one goal: erase everything and start over. Then came the distortions. Heroes aged backward or forward in seconds. Events overlapped. People vanished mid-conversation. Dinosaurs showed up in the present. Gotham flickered. Metropolis stuttered. The timeline was collapsing, and nobody knew why. That's when Extant showed up, a corrupted version of former hero Hank Hall, Monarch. Extant hijacked the time stream to become a god, but he was just the distraction. The real architect was Hal. When the truth hit, everything spiraled. Hal didn't want power. He wanted to reboot existence, wipe out the past, smooth out every inconsistency, and rebuild a perfect DC universe where no one had to suffer the way he did. The final battle happened at the vanishing point where time runs out. Every era collided. The Justice Society, the Legion of Superheroes, even time travelers like Wave Rider jumped in. Superman tried reasoning with Hal. It didn't work. What stopped him wasn't a speech. It was Jay Garrick, Alan Scott, and the last fragments of history forcing one final stand. Hal lost, but time didn't fully reset. It staggered forward. Some characters were gone. Some were rewritten. Some stories just didn't make sense anymore. But the timeline moved on, battered, scarred, and stitched together with editorial tape. 0 Hour wasn't about killing the multiverse. It was about erasing the very idea of consequences, and how even heroes can fall when they think they know better than time itself. And that's all of them. Every major crisis DC's tried to bury, rewrite, or clean up after. But
yeah. That was a lot. Crazy events. Some of which I really want to cover on the channel in the future. Like DC's Metal. That is definitely on the list. I really want to talk about that. But I'm trying to like give myself a break with comic book events for a hot minute. And just kind of stick with short stories, like 5 issues, 5 or 6 issues or something like that, just to give myself like a breather, because I got so much other stuff going on. I can't really devote too much time with events. But in any case, let me know in the comments below which DC event was your favorite, which era of Marvel was your favorite, which one's your least favorite. I think the diversity era was like least favorite, because it was so pandery that it just like went overboard with trying to course correct stuff that didn't need course correct. And which is your favorite Lantern? Anyway, I will see you guys possibly tomorrow for some reviews. But in any case, take care, and I'll see you all soon. Peace.